Okay, alichi shi nyuka ka Byron tenesaka woman chutimi kami. Alili kami, ali kami. Me siento muy bien hoy día aquí presente. Soy el coordinador de becas para Culture Survival. Culture Survival is an organization that supports non-for-profit organization that advocates for Indigenous people's rights and supports Indigenous communities, self-determination, cultures, and political resilience since 1972. Our fellowship program supports Indigenous youth ages 17 to 28 with funding to carry out projects that nurture their leadership and technical skills while supporting their wider community. Fellowships have enabled youth to build capacities in Indigenous rights, audiovisual communication, maintenance of ecosystems, food, sovereignty, economic vitality, and the revitalization of cultures such as Indigenous languages and traditional knowledge. And so here today we have three fellows, current and past, that are going to speak about themselves and their projects today in our Cultural Survival Organization. So here I would like to pass the mic to Ryan, and she's going to tell you a little bit about herself and the project that she's working on.
Marimar Compuche, Marimar Complamien, Quiño Puyen Chalín. Un saludo a todas, mi nombre es Rayen, tengo 22 años, soy de Chile, soy mapuche. Mi organización es Huechequecheca y Trofilmongen.
Good afternoon, my name is Ryan, I'm 22 years old and I'm Mapuche from Chile and I'm from an Indigenous organization.
Desde la organización hemos estado trabajando por revitalizar desde 2022 la propia identidad de las juventudes y trabajar temas a nivel internacional que también tienen que ver con la misma defensa de los defensores ambientales.
Since 2022, we've been working with youth, Indigenous youth in the community to revitalize Indigenous identity, and we've also worked at the international level.
Gracias al trabajo que hemos realizado desde 2020, hemos podido reunir a juventudes a nivel nacional para poder trabajar también viendo las problemáticas territoriales que a día de hoy tienen que ver con proyectos extractivistas y minerales de transición.
Since 2020, we've been able to gather youth to also support on issues that have to do with transition minerals and extractive industries.
El proyecto que estamos llevando a cabo en Chile tiene que ver con sesiones de podcast, con los territorios, con las comunidades y reivindicando también la propia defensa territorial.
The project that we're currently taking up, it's a series of podcasts that has to do with territorial defense with the community and as part of the project as well.
La ruta de los minerales de transición desde que se extraen hasta que se forman los productos. ¿Quiénes son los beneficiados? Hablamos de pobreza, hablamos de riqueza, hablamos también del rol que tienen los pueblos indígenas.
Yeah, and some of the conversations we're having is tracing all of the supply chains from the extraction to where these products end up, and we talk about who is benefiting from the extraction of these minerals, and we talk about wealth and also need for other financial needs for communities.
Gracias. Thank you, Ryan. And so now we're going to go to Shailene, who's also a past fellow, and she will also share about herself and her project.
Thank you. Hafade Na'anhusi Shailene Salas, Ginin Guahan Island Marianas, family in Alabadu, Teku, Gaduman, Zu, and Guahu Trente Años. So my name is Shailene Salas. I'm from the island of Guam, which is an island within an archipelago called the Marianas Islands. And I am 30 years old, and my family clan names include Alabadu, Gadzumen, and Cheku. And so I did my Cultural Survival Fellowship. I'm a former fellow, and my project was writing a climate change guidebook that focused on community-based solutions and adaptations to climate change as it exists in my region, specifically Guam, because that's where I live and work. And so for my project, I wrote this guidebook in consultation with a local nonprofit that does a lot of climate justice work in our region. They're called Micronesia Climate Change Alliance. And so the guidebook pretty much covers a lot of like peer-reviewed research on what climate change means for our region and how we can respond and adapt to it. But mostly it is made up of interviews that I did with community members and asked them about their work and their recommendations for what people can do about climate change. And so I interviewed folks that worked in fields that are highly affected by climate impacts, such as I interviewed a farmer and people doing coastal management work, people working in water, and yeah, some other things. But I did want to just briefly talk about the water issue because it is a pretty big one for Guam because our aquifer, which is where we primarily get our water from, is decreasing because of climate change. As time goes on, there will be less water in the aquifer, and because of increasing temperatures and decreasing rainfall. And then on top of that, as more people move to Guam and more developments come up, we're putting a lot of pressure on how much water we're taking out from there. Yeah. So I wrote this guidebook, and I also created a poster to supplement the project, and it is more of a visual representation of the project so that there's kind of like multiple mediums to access. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Shailene. And so Shailene is a past fellow. She already has completed her project. And we're going to move on to another fellow who is currently on her last, I would say, steps or in finalizing her project. So, Ksenia.
Дарабаларыңдағыттар, мен атым Ксения Большакова, мен бүгін кепсем бем үлем тугунан, хуруйбут кенигем тугунан. Всем здравствуйте, меня зовут Ксения Большакова, я долганка с Сибири. Сегодня я буду рассказывать про свой проект, моя первая дебютная книга.
Hello everyone, I'm Ksenia Bolshakova from the Taimyr Peninsula, from the Russian Arctic. I'm Dolgan, and I will be speaking today about my project on Dolgan narrative, my debut book written in Dolgan.
До того, как я переехала учиться в интернат на 6 лет, я все детство кочевала с моими бабушкой и дедушкой. Они у меня оленеводы. Вся моя семья — это оленеводы, охотники, рыболовы и собиратели и искатели бивни мамонта.
Before going to the studies at the boarding school where I passed 6 years, I lived with my grandparents and our reindeer in tundra. We had nomad lifestyle and being reindeer herders, hunters, fishermen, and mammoth ivory seekers, we live our traditional life of the native people of the Russian Arctic.
И в своей книге я написала про свое детство как раз-таки с бабушкой, с дедушкой, как я проводила детство в тундре, как я им помогала, как я ездила на рыбалку. В общем, эта книга пронизана очень чисто и конкретно описан быт кочевого народа, и каждый читатель, читая эту книгу, сможет прикоснуться и понять, какая это трудная жизнь.
My book, my novel, is about childhood memories of our reindeer herding life, and there I described the daily life of Dalgan workers in tundra, all the challenges, all the hard labor that we live there, and I describe the involvement of children in this hard work, everyday fishing, reindeer herding, but my work is very light, bright, and full of love to the people, to our lands and our reindeer.
Да, и мое письмо пронизано вот как раз-таки любовью к моей земле, к моей семье, к нашим оленям. И это читается в то же время, это очень это тяжелое повествование, но в то же время оно читается очень легко. И в этой книге я говорю на двух языках. Первый — это мой детский голос, мое детское видение, как все описывается моим детским голосом. А второй — это уже мой взрослый голос, моя рефлексия по поводу колонизации, по поводу сегодняшнего дня, как, в каком месте сейчас находится мой народ впоследствии всей колонизации.
My narrative is very personal, and where I concern all the challenges of today's life of nomad peoples, but at the same time it is full of hope and humor, because there are two voices present in my narrative. One is a child voice, and it describes the daily life, the joy, and another one is the voice of an adult native person that also reflects on the consequences of colonization and the current state of our nation, the loss of native language, the loss of reindeer herding, and other challenges that we face.
И моя книга называется «Булузда Ирер» и «Мерзлота тает». Это о том, как мы теряем, что как вечное становится конечным сегодня. То есть это, если буквально переводить, как наша вечная мерзлота начинает свое таяние, так и наши народы, наши языки, наш образ жизни, которые, казалось бы, должны быть вечными, но сейчас они становятся конечными.
The title of the book is The Frost Also Melts. The frost stands here for permafrost. And the idea of the whole writing is that these things that were the forever for us, such things like permafrost, our nation, our language, our tundra, our reindeer, it all was the forever for us. But now we see how it becomes to be something very finite. So we are losing this, and at the same time, all these things, they are crucified in my writing.
И долган всего 8 тысяч во всем мире, и говорящих на родном языке всего около 800. Поэтому моя работа очень важна для моего народа. У нас литература не представлена на нашем языке. У нас был всего один прозаик, и я вот вторая, кто пишет прозу на нашем родном языке.
My writing and my project is very important. Is a very important contribution for the community, for the nation, because there are just 8,000 Dalgans in all the world, and just 800 of them they are Dalgan speakers. Dalgan language had a very difficult destiny, and we practically have no literature written in Dalgan. And I'm actually the second fiction writer who writes in Dalgan, and the first one was very pro-colonial one.
Thank you, Ksenia. So thank you all, three of you, for sharing a little bit about your project and the realities that are happening in your communities and how you're approaching these realities in going about also building your leadership. And so My next question is, so we have a series of questions for the fellows, and each one is going to share their thoughts. It can be directly about this question or just in general. For example, why is it important to strengthen youth leadership, whether it be in your community or in general, in all youth today? So I'm going to start with Rayen.
En Chile y creo que a nivel mundial vivimos a día de hoy un proceso recién de integración de las juventudes a espacios de poder. Por lo tanto, a día de hoy recién las Naciones Unidas al menos reconoce también el rol de las juventudes indígenas. Por lo tanto, es una cuestión bastante reciente que al menos a nivel internacional recién se está trabajando.
In Chile, we're recently living a process of integration of indigenous youth in the power structures. And now, with the recognition at the UN level of the importance of the participation of youth, I would say this is a very recent development.
En Chile al menos vivimos un proceso de criminalización de la misma lucha de los pueblos indígenas, hablando también de mi pueblo como pueblo mapuche, en donde el pueblo en su conjunto, hablando de personas adultas, hablando de ancianos, hablando de autoridades, hablando de juventudes y de niñeces, en donde todas por igual se ven igualmente criminalizadas por el hecho solamente de existir y ser indígenas.
In Chile, we're also living a process of criminalization against indigenous peoples. And speaking about my experience as a Mapuche person, as a Mapuche indigenous person, there is criminalization, and not just criminalization of adults, of elderly people, of children. So we're living a process of criminalization in Chile.
Con lo que hemos también trabajado en la beca es precisamente otorgarles nuevamente el rol de las juventudes en la estructura básica de los pueblos indígenas, en donde todos tenemos el mismo valor. Y esto también considerando de que las juventudes somos igual de importantes que las niñeces y otros integrantes de las mismas comunidades. Por lo tanto, si hablamos de liderazgo, hablamos también de una esencia de los mismos pueblos indígenas.
Through this project, we aim to reinsert indigenous youth in my community into the power structures, and to remind everyone that that young people have also a role to play, as well as children and adults in the process that we are living.
Ha sido un camino difícil y a día de hoy sigue siendo difícil. Vemos pocas juventudes en instancias en donde es importante reconocer y valorizar el rol que están ejerciendo en sus comunidades, que al final todo lo que hemos ido trabajando como juventudes va siempre a favor de nuestras propias comunidades, de nuestros pueblos, de nuestras familias.
It has been a difficult process because what we are trying to do is to give back the value that indigenous youth bring into these structures. And we are also trying to play an important role that we play in our communities to reinsert that.
Así que si hablamos de liderazgo, hablamos también de la base propia que tiene una juventud que al día de hoy se ve limitada en su forma de ser indígena, en donde la historia le ha quitado su propia identidad, su lengua, y reivindicamos también dentro de nuestras propias comunidades y resistimos para seguir reivindicando nuestra propia existencia.
And so when we are talking about leadership, it's important to know that our participation historically has been limited. So we are working in this space to reclaim the identity, to reclaim the leadership of indigenous youth in these spaces.
Thank you, Rayen, for those words. And the same question goes for you, Shailene, about why is it important to strengthen youth leadership? And it can be in your community or in general.
Thank you. I wanted to respond to this question by sharing a story. It's a Chamorro legend. It's the legend of the Chonkon Lemai, or the breadfruit tree. And if you don't know, breadfruit is it's a big fruit that grows on a very big tree, and it's kind of starchy. It's really good, and it's really a staple crop across the Pacific. And so, yeah, long ago, the people of Guam were living in one of two clans, either the southern or the northern. And one during there was a time where the southern clan, they were experiencing a famine. There were no fish in the sea to catch, and their fruits weren't bearing trees. And so it went on for some time, and the community was really suffering because of it. And so the leader of the clan, the Magalahi, he decided to take his three sons and a group of other leaders in his community and travel to the north to meet with that clan, talk to the leader, and see how they can solve the issue. And it so happens that the leader of the clan of the north is his brother. But because of their responsibilities, they don't really see each other, and their kids have never met. And so, yeah, so the southern group, they start their travel to the north. And when they reach the middle of the island, they run into another group that's traveling, and it happens to be the brother and his team and his three sons, because the north is also experiencing this famine. And so, that's when they find out that the whole island is suffering from this. And so, even though the brothers haven't seen each other for a long time, it's a really somber reunion for them. They're kind of sad and don't know what to do about the situation. But the sons, this is their first time meeting their cousins, and so they're really happy. They're rejoicing with one another. They're exchanging stories, and they're having a great time meeting one another. And so, it's a complicated situation because the famine is island-wide, right? So they can't figure out anything in that day, so they decide to stay the night, where they're at. And in the morning, all six of the boys, because there's three sons and three sons, they passed away in the night. And so, the fathers wake up, the group wakes up to find them, and they're filled with grief. They spend some time mourning. They bury their sons, and just spend the day there, and decide that in the morning they'll sleep there again, and in the morning they'll return to their respective clans and share the news and just try to figure something out. So yes, they sleep, and when they wake up, there are six huge, fully grown chonkon lemai, breadfruit trees, grown at the grave of each of the boys. And so, everyone is happy about that, and very thankful, because that life source came from the young boys. So they pick the first six breadfruit and leave it at the graves as an offering to the children, and then they nourish themselves, and then they take the fruits and bring it to their clans and plant those trees in their areas, so that they can feed their people. And so I think the story teaches us that young people are the source of great transformative change. And so, yeah, children, Famagu'an, they bring love and joy into this world, and they are really the source of our hope and our future. And so, yeah, to answer the question, I would say why wouldn't we want to support Indigenous youth? And yeah.
Thank you for such story. Same question for you, Ksenia.
Да, прекрасную легенду рассказала моя сестра, но, к сожалению, что касается моего народа и молодежи, Долган у нас до сих пор не признана колонизация, и национальное сознание как таковое у нашей молодежи, да и в принципе, наверное, у всего народа как такового нет.
I appreciate the legend that my sister told, but in the case of Dolgans, in general in Russia, the colonization was not recognized, and that is why in the nation itself, the self-determination is very, very poor.
И очень сложно привлекать молодежь к какой-то активной деятельности, потому что сейчас в основном вся наша молодежь живет в больших городах, растрачивает свои силы и энергию на обычной работе, как, например, там, доставка или там такси, не знаю. И когда я начинаю говорить с ними о важности нашего языка, нашего народа, нашего будущего, я встречаюсь, к сожалению, с непониманием и непониманием той ценности того, что мы представители нашего народа.
Nowadays, when I try to talk to my youth, the youth from my nation, I, in many cases, face the ignoration of the value of our identity. And many young Dalgan people, they just move to the bigger cities. They work there on some not paid job as taxi drivers or delivery, and they just waste their life in this, and there is nothing to return to for them or to the community.
И я понимаю, что это связано с малым, с недостаточным образованием нашего народа. Когда пришла советская власть, они отняли у нас возможность быть в будущем полноценными оленеводами, которые могли бы взращивать, там, увеличивать свое стадо. Отняв это, они не дали нам, не додали, возможно, достаточного уровня образования, с которым мы могли бы сейчас работать и поддерживать наш народ, чтобы он не угасал, как зажженная спичка.
And I know the roots of this problem. This is mostly very bad education that people can get in the community, and at the same time, the colonization was very severe in our case. And in the Soviet times, when our reindeer herders had their customary lands and had their traditional way of life, then the Soviet authorities deprived us from the traditional way of life. They made us to settle down, and at the same time they gave us very little. They hadn't give us dignity and education, so that we lost much and we got very little.
И сейчас моя работа с этой книгой, это моя неугасающая надежда на то, что, прочитав ее, возможно, зажгутся чьи-то сердца или заразятся чьи-то сердца моим активизмом и присоединятся к моей работе, чтобы мы и дальше поддерживали наш язык, наш народ и наше будущее.
My book is the intent to speak to our youth. It is my hope to enlighten their hearts, to tell them how the things are, what are the reasons of the today's challenges, so that I just hope that through this reading they could understand more about the real colonization consequences.
Thank you, Ksenia, for sharing that. We're going to move on to the next question. The next question is, what international mechanisms of support do youth need today? So youth in your community, youth in general, Indigenous youth, what types of support do your community need today?
En Chile y el Estado chileno desde su formación se han encargado de, de homogeneizar a todos los pueblos indígenas. Por lo tanto, instancias como esta, en donde hermanas de otros pueblos muestran su experiencia, tiene que ver también con mecanismos internacionales en donde se releva el mismo rol de los pueblos indígenas y todo su conjunto.
It's the Chilean state, since its inception, has done the job of trying to homogenize all of the peoples in Chile. And so when we come in these international spaces, it is the goal to elevate the identity of the people here.
En Chile se ve mucho en las comunidades que las juventudes no quieren hablar sus lenguas, porque la discriminación, el racismo, la violencia es psicológica, física y espiritual. Por lo tanto, hay una vulnerabilidad innata en estas juventudes y hablarlas en estos espacios internacionales tiene que ver también en realmente hacer ejercicio de los mecanismos y ponerlos en práctica, no solamente que quede en el discurso.
So in Chile, historically, as we've seen, you can see that indigenous youth don't want to speak their indigenous languages because there is a situation of discrimination and racism, and this is at the level of psychological, but it's also physical, at the physical level. And so when we are coming into the spaces knowing that there is vulnerability of indigenous youth, we are expected to come into these international spaces and not just talk about international mechanisms, but put them in practice.
Gracias a las instancias internacionales, Chile ha tomado responsabilidad respecto a lo que ocurre en las comunidades, respecto a los proyectos extractivistas, respecto a políticas públicas, porque de la misma forma en la que se han ido levantando las comunidades, es como también se han ido trabajando de mejor forma la participación, la incidencia y la vinculación de los pueblos indígenas en espacios políticos.
Thanks to the work at the international level with international mechanisms, Chile has made some changes in the way they approach, for example, extractive industries. Me quedé en lo de industrias extractivas. ¿Puedes repetir otra vez para que pueda?
La política pública es no más de lo que hemos exigido nosotros como pueblos indígenas, y la política internacional funciona de la misma forma. Son las necesidades de los pueblos indígenas aplicadas en discurso y luego en la realidad.
So there has to be a combination of public policy, but also international politics, and a combination of both can take us there. And when we put them in practice, there can be meaningful change.
Por lo tanto, instancias en donde estoy yo, mis hermanas de otros pueblos, otros compañeros de otros pueblos, tiene que ver con tomar las posiciones de poder, empoderarnos nosotros mismos como juventudes, como personas indígenas, y comenzar a cambiar las cosas, porque las cosas no se hacen sin nosotros, se hacen con nosotros.
And so in the position that we are now, when we come to these international spaces, and my sisters here present and other also members here present, we need to focus on retaking that power back, that position of power back, because those changes have to be with us, not without us.
Yupe Johnny, thank you, Ryan. And so the same question Shailene, what international mechanisms of support do youth need today in your community or in general?
Thank you. So child abuse has been described as it's occurring in my region to the point where it's like an epidemic. So I think that is one way. I did want to say that, these kinds of things happen for a lot of reasons, and I think one of the main ones is the intergenerational trauma that exists in the community, which comes from a lot of things, but again, I think a major way is because of our history with colonization and militarization. And so, yeah, Guam and the Marianas has been colonized since the 1500s, and today continues to be a colony where we are considered an unincorporated territory of the U.S. And since originally we were colonized by Spain in the 1500s, and then that power shifted to the U.S. As a result of the Spanish-American Wars in 1898. And so under U.S. rule, they have taken the liberty of highly militarizing Guam and the Northern Marianas Islands as well. And so for a people that sees so much violence and have for hundreds of years, it's not hard to imagine why violence exists now within our communities in a very intimate way. When I was thinking about this question, I thought of how the youth in my region in Guam could really need to be protected, and safeguarded. I just wanted to read a couple statistics from a recent local article. It was published in 2022, but it was about rates of child abuse in Guam. And so, here are some points. So the rate of physical abuse is 3 times higher in the single parent family. The rate of physical abuse is 4 times higher if the mother is cohabitating with the child's biological father, but they are unmarried. The rate of physical abuse is 5 times higher if the child is living in a married stepfamily. The rate of physical abuse is 10 times higher if the mother is cohabitating with a boyfriend. And the list goes on. I don't really want to go through all of them, but I just wanted to read that to make the point of how common it is. And so, I don't have like a specific way on how international or how the international community can support, this issue. But I did want to just read a short thing from the Convention on the Rights of the Child, which I've never heard of, but I bought it yesterday at the UN library. And so, so I just wanted to read a piece of it, which describes the overview of what the rights are. So the CRC, which is the Convention on the Rights of the Child, includes such fundamental and inalienable human rights as that to life, have a name and a citizenship, freedom of speech and thought, access to healthcare, education, and leisure, and freedom from exploitation, unlawful detention, torture, abuse, and neglect. And so, I guess one way that the international community can support the youth of Guam and my region would to be to like reinforce these rights. As I said, I've never heard of them, and they definitely don't exist where I live.
Thank you, Shailene. And the same question for Ksenia. What international mechanisms of support do youth need today?
На сегодняшний день в России очень сложно с каким-либо с поддержкой разных инициатив, с их финансированием. Сейчас такая тенденция, что поддерживаются только проекты, которые направлены на высветление, облагораживание правительства. Но если ваш проект как-то отклоняется от этого движения, то вы будете персоной нон грата.
Nowadays, for all the indigenous peoples, not just for the youth, it is very difficult to find any kind of support, any funding for their initiatives, because the only initiatives that are supported are those that are pro-governmental, that work for the propaganda. So that if you would like just to do something to advocate indigenous rights, it's even dangerous for yourself.
Находясь не в России, я сейчас имею возможность об этом всем открыто говорить, но у остальных представителей разных народов России такой возможности нет.
Staying now outside Russia, I have this great privilege to speak out free, and at the same time, my brothers and sisters who stay in Russia, they just have no this capacity.
Сейчас идет тотальная пропаганда наших людей, представителей коренных малочисленных народов и немалочисленных народов отправляют на войну, тем самым наше население, наша популяция становится все меньше и меньше, погибают представители, лучшие представители наших народов, а те, кто не согласен воевать, их просто сажают в тюрьму.
Nowadays, Russia has the aggression against Ukraine. This is the new colonial war, and many indigenous peoples of Russia, the members of the communities, they are drafted as well, and they're disproportionately drafted. So that is why our youth participates in this new colonial war, and people die, and if they just try to protest against this, they are put in jail.
В это же время Россия вышла из глобальной конвенции по правам коренных народов, так что сейчас мы не имеем правовой поддержки ни внутри России, ни где больше.
At the same time, Russia left the UN Convention on Indigenous Rights, and that is why we just have no cover, no right cover for us at the international level. So our peoples are just jailed inside the country.
Поэтому мой основной посыл к международным механизмам — это не игнорировать проекты коренных народов России, которые направлены для поддержания их народов, находящихся в России сейчас, потому что это единственная возможность для нас сейчас делать что-то для себя, а не для правительства.
I also encourage the international mechanisms to listen to the voices of the indigenous peoples of Russia, because it is very risky to be voiced out, and it is the unique opportunity for us to find any kind of support.
Thank you, Ksenia. So we're going to move on to the last question for today. And this one is for, could you share with any of the youth listening to this panel today an aspect of your culture that you have able to lean on to empower yourself during difficult times in your leadership journey? When you're put in a spaces of leadership, often it can be a lot of pressure. And so what are some of these ways of living or practices that you're able to lean on? If you can share briefly something about this to the youth listening today.
Las juventudes indígenas en Chile hemos encontrado un lugar de apoyo con otras juventudes indígenas. Es un espacio seguro, conversar la realidad que vivimos en los distintos contextos. Chile es un país que tiene una diversidad geográfica radical, pero eso no quita el hecho de que hablar la realidad propia que vive una juventud indígena es propia también de un espacio que acoge y motiva el trabajo propio también de esas mismas juventudes.
The youth in Chile and the indigenous youth have found a support system by leaning on and gathering, connecting with other indigenous youth. And Chile has a very diverse geographical population, but that does not negate, or that does not make it so that there's no connection.
Reivindicar las propias palabras indígenas, lenguas indígenas, también ha sido un motor que ayuda al propio liderazgo y a la reivindicación propia de los pueblos.
Another form of support has been the revitalization and the maintaining of indigenous languages and customs and traditions.
Hablar de Itrofilmongen, Huechequeche, Cuifiquecheyem, Mapu, conceptos indígenas que tienen que ver también con formas de relacionarnos nosotros con los territorios y entenderlos también como una extensión propia de nuestros cuerpos. Y eso ha facilitado también una vinculación mucho más profunda con los bosques, los ríos, las montañas, las otras especies que viven con nosotros.
She spoke a few words in native languages, and then she said that also connecting with our bodies and understanding ourselves through the cosmovisions and through the understandings of their indigenous ways has also been a main way of support and understanding the nature around them in the forests and the bodies of waters around them.
Solo me queda decirles que la forma en la que estamos haciendo las cosas está bien. Resistir siendo indígena está bien. En mi pueblo decimos marchihueu, que tiene que ver con levantarnos 10 veces. Esas 10 veces vengo yo y todos mis ancestros.
It is okay, it is good what we're doing, resisting as indigenous people and continuing to speak up. And in my town, that is considered the right thing to do. And there's a saying to get up 10 times, and those 10 times I come as myself and as you all.
Okay, same question. Can you briefly tell the youth something that you are able to lean on in times of hardship when it comes to your leadership journey?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, I recently became a student of a Zoamti, or a traditional healer in Guam. They're actually from a Northern Marianas island called Rhoda. But yeah, so that is something that has brought me a lot of comfort. The type of healing that I'm learning is called Amut, and it's healing that involves using local plants to make teas and other medicines. So yeah, that this learning brings me a lot of comfort because, I mean, first of all, it is healing, you know, by definition. And then also in this process, I'm learning a lot about, you know, the land, about my own body, about the culture and history, and even learning a lot of the language through this work, because our plants have Chamorro names, and the processes to prepare them, you know, are told in Chamorro. So yeah, this has been very healing, and yeah, just something that definitely comforts me when I'm in difficult times.
Thank you, Shailene. And same question for you, Ksenia.
Да, я бы хотела, наверное, сказать найдите то, в чем вы хороши, и делайте это. Если вы знаете язык, занимайтесь языком. Если вы умеете плести корзины, плетите корзины. Если вы знаете, как готовить национальные блюда, делайте по этому проекты. Начните делать сами, а остальные к вам подтянутся.
My message to the indigenous youth is rather simple and brief. Just find something that you know how to do for the sake of your nation and do this. If you're a language speaker, do language projects. If you know how to weave baskets, weave baskets. If you are knowledgeable about the traditional cuisine, just begin a project and try to involve others.
Единственное, что мы должны знать и помнить, это наша ответственность, которая сейчас лежит на нас. Мы связующее поколение между нашими старейшинами и нашими будущими долганами, представителями других народов. И мы должны это все сохранить, приумножить и передать.
And then another thing is the responsibility, because we are responsible about the preservation and even about the loss. So we should prepare the future for new generations of our indigenous peoples.
Well, that's all the questions we have for you today. We thank you for your time and our listeners. If you're interested in more about the program, Cultural Survival, please visit our website or follow us on social media. Thank you.